All right, welcome back to Photoshop 2024, and today we're going to walk you through just a basic editing process. I'm going to show you a few specific items as well today, but we're just going to do a slow walkthrough. And we're actually going to start here in Camera Raw. So if you are shooting raw photos, I'm just going to quickly go over it, but I must stress, I know this is a Photoshop playlist or tutorial series, but you should really watch the Adobe Camera Raw videos. It makes a huge difference. You should be using them before you get to Photoshop. A lot of stuff that we might do in a Photoshop video without toning something in Raw is going to be different, and it really should be done in Adobe Camera Raw. So I've opened up two images. We've got image 1 and image 2, and this image is a little bit dark and needs some options. So when I'm in RAW, first of all, notice that I'm using the color profile of Adobe RGB 1998 in 16-bit. You can just click on this and you can change those settings there. Now, the main thing that I want you to change is we've got these color profiles. We're not going to worry about those today. They don't make that much of a difference. But what we want to do in every single image that you open, you should always try to get your color balance as perfect as you can get it, because you can do this better in Adobe Camera Raw than you can in Photoshop. That doesn't mean that you won't tweak colors and parts of an image in Photoshop. Overall color balance. And this already looks better. It's nice and warm. This looks more realistic. We're going to just go with that. We could adjust some stuff. I'm also going to make some what we call global adjustments. Most global adjustments I actually make in RAW, not in Photoshop, because we're doing this to the original capture before it's processed. So let's open up our shadows, and where this image is just a little bit dark. Now, one thing I will tell you, when you make an adjustment in RAW or in Photoshop, notice we've got this dark area, but we've got this area up here, which is kind of bright. You don't want to make an adjustment so this looks better and this looks worse. So what we're going to do is we're going to save this adjustment because it's screwing up that part on the top, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to hit Command Z to undo that. We're going to put that back at 0. And what I'm going to do is come in here and make a selective adjustment. And basically, I'm going to pick sky. Okay, so it's selecting the sky right now. So if I was to make an adjustment, it would only happen in the sky. But I don't actually want it in the sky. I want it everywhere but the sky. So we're going to come up here. We're going to click on these three little dots, and we're going to hit invert. And that's going to flip the mask. So now I can make that adjustment where I'm brightening up everything, but it's not affecting this area up here. So you can see that looks a whole lot better. Could I go in here and do this little specific area? Yeah, but we'll just leave that for Photoshop today. So let's go ahead and click on the other image, and woo, this thing is bad. Go back to the global adjustments. We're going to lower the contrast because it's so bright. We're going to lower the highlights, and we're going to lower the exposure to this image just to get it better. All right. And I'm just going, I know I'm messing this part up, but this is something that I want to tackle in Photoshop that makes sense. So to open both images, I'm just going to hold the Command key on a Mac. It would probably be the Control key on a PC. I'm going to come down here and hit Open. One thing you have not heard me talk about much, and we have down here in the panels, is this little thing called the Info panel. I find it to be the key to toning in Photoshop. My monitor is calibrated, but if your monitor isn't calibrated and might be off a little bit, a lot of times the info palette can really benefit you because it gives you a real accurate reading of what the digital numbers are in your image. So by default, the info panel doesn't look like this. So if you click on one of these little eyedroppers that you see right here, and in this case, we'll go over to this one, it brings up a whole bunch of stuff. I think it comes in actual color and CMYK. I switch mine to grayscale. Grayscale is really what we want, but I put the other one at RGB. But most of the times I'm reading the grayscale, and the letter K stands for black. How much black is in an image? So if we go up here, we're going to have a low number. If we go to a dark area, we're going to have a high number, okay? So let's go ahead and start, and we're going to go back over to this image right here. Usually, since we have made global adjustments in Lightroom, we don't need to make global layer adjustments over here unless we look at it a second time and this is okay. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I wish I just needed to brighten some areas up. So in my case, I use curves. I'm going to go down here to the shadows and just try to get the shadows up a little bit. And I'm going to bring the midtones and highlights back down to where they were. And that looks a whole lot better. If you ever want to see the difference, you can just turn it on and off. And what I'm looking at is right in here mainly. That looks a whole lot better. So how do I tone an image? Well, I divide an image up into areas that I think I'm going to have to adjust. So in this area, it could be this area. Okay, that's one. Then the other is the animal right here. And then the rest would maybe be in the background. In this image, I think we're probably only going to adjust the animal here. I could come up here and use select subject and it will automatically select this animal. And that's perfectly wonderful. I could also use the object selection tool to do the same exact thing. There's millions of different ways, right? We're just trying to select the animal. All those are going to work. This is the problem though. What I want to brighten is just this dark area. I don't want to make this any brighter than it already is at this point, or at least in my brain. So let's go up here to select and hit subject again. And we're going to select the animal and we're going to hit curves again. All right. So anything that I do now is going to affect the animal, brightening him up. And you can see it's making this area a little bit too bright. Basically in photography, a lot of what you're trying to do is trying to lead the viewer through the image. And you usually don't want a bright edge, right? So we're going to darken this, okay? So we've already made this selection and we know what hides an adjustment is the brush. But I'm only going to do it at 50%. So up here we have opacity and flow. I'll get the flow later. I'm going to lower my opacity to around 50%. So I'm only painting out 50% of this adjustment. And in this mask, we're going to see it as gray. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to paint this in just like that. I did the wrong color. I painted white into white. So everybody makes mistakes. Let's flick this to black and we'll come in here and paint that out. Let's take a look at it. So you can see right here, I painted gray into this area to remove 50% of what I did in this adjustment in that location. Okay. That's one way to do this. So let's go ahead and turn this and delete it. The other way is to do the old brush method that I showed you the other day. So I'm going to make a curves adjustment. And when I do this, I'm looking at this location. Okay. So I'm looking to see how bright I want to make that. So in the histogram, the data in the histogram doesn't start until right about here. So I'll usually slide this highlight line to just before where the data starts because there's no data right here to adjust anyways. So that's called optimizing your histogram. So I'm sliding that over and then I'm brightening the area how I want it. I think that looks pretty good. Okay. And then I'm going to paint black into the area where I don't want that, which is here. All right. In this case, we're doing 50% of that because I have my brush at 50%. If I moved it to 100%, it would remove 100% of that adjustment. It's making it too gray. I don't like that. So we're going to leave it how it was. You can see over here in the mask, it looks weird. Let's click on that. And it just removed 50% in that one little teeny tiny area. All right. Both did the exact same thing. They brighten this area and darken this area, but because I didn't make a selection, it also brightened this area. And to remove it, I'd have to then go in and 100% and paint it out of this whole area, which would be a pain in the ass. So in this case, that selection method that I did in the beginning is going to be more accurate. So what we would do is go to select subject. It selects my subject. I make my curves. We'll do levels adjustment just to do levels here for everybody. Once again, I'm going to slide, whoops, the wrong slider, this up to the beginning of that histogram. And we're going to slide this to about there. Might get a little more highlights. That looks Okay, so we've made our adjustment when it's not in the background, it's just on the animal. And then we're gonna paint that out. So we've got the color black, our brush. We'll move this down to about 50%, and we will paint this out of the animal right there. So that is making that selective adjustment, okay? And now let's say I wanted to darken this area. I don't think we really need to do it, but we're gonna do that as well. I could easily make a lasso adjustment with a high feather. I could go 55, and this is a really easy selection to make. So we can just come in here and go, whoop, select, hit our curves, darken that. Because we have a nice feather, we can't tell where it is. It is darkening the leaves up here in this location. There's a couple of different ways to tackle that. I can take the brush and make my brush a little smaller, and I could paint it out of those locations so it's not affecting it. That's one way to do it, all right? Let's go ahead and delete this layer. I can also go up here to select sky, since we've got that option to select the sky. It's selecting the sky. I make my curves adjustment again. I darken it. It's just in the sky, and bam, just like that, we're good. Okay. This little black spot over here is kind of heavy. Okay. So this is kind of bright and area. And then we got this unimportant area that's kind of dark and heavy. We don't really want unimportant areas to have that much weight. So I could make the lasso, take the lasso, select this area, make a curves adjustment, and then just kind of raise this up a little bit. And we're just flattening that out so that black isn't so heavy in the image. Now, I'm looking at, I think this is an elk. I'm not positive, but I think it's an elk. And the elk looks a little bit flat, all right? I think it could use a little bit of contrast. But sometimes when you look at a computer monitor for a while, you can't tell. So this is where using the K value can start to be helpful. So I've got my lasso, and I can go in here and I can start to look at dark areas. And so right there, we got about 93%. Right here, or 91%. His eye is about 89%. So yes, we could use a little bit of contrast. Now, you don't want it to be at 100. Usually 97, 98 is about as high as you want. So let's go ahead and make a curves adjustment. And we're just going to increase that contrast a little bit. And then we're going to go back in here and read it. You can see we're at 93, 94. Right here on his little chin, he's about 95, 98. Now, usually when I increase the contrast, so right here, I've just slid this over a little bit, all right? You'll notice that there's a black line right here. That's the where the original curve should be, but it's below it. So when I increase this, it also darkened this area a little bit. So normally what I'll do is I'll make a point, okay, and slide this back up to that original line. All right, so now we just have that curve. And that keeps areas from getting dark, but it adds that contrast back in the image. All right, so that's without and with. All right, so that looks a whole lot better. So that's our image here. That's the step in the process of me going through and doing that. Now, this mask, when I added the contrast, did it everywhere. That's okay. If I only wanted that contrast to appear in the elk, I can actually use this mask that we have down here. So I can hold the Option on a Mac or the Alt on a PC, hold it down, left click and drag it up. And you're just moving or duplicating the mask to this location. So now this curves adjustment is only happening on the animal and it's not happening everywhere else. Little hint and trick for you. Let's click on this image. In this photo, we've got lots of different areas. We've got the sky. We've got this bright foreground thingamajigger. That needs to be toned independently. This area in here could be toned independently. The car and the rocks if we wanted to. In this case, I don't think we need to do the rocks. I'm not so sure that we need to do the sky. But we do need to do this object right here. So we don't want something that's unimportant on the side to be this bright, right? So we're going to, what I do, call it dumb it down. We're going to make it less important and less bright in the image so that our eyes go to here, not to this bright object that we have here. So we can click on the little object selection tool and see if it's able to recognize this as just an object. And then we can just click on it and make a selection. Otherwise, we could select it ourselves or brush that in. So you can see right here, it's not recognizing it. It's just recognizing it as one area. So that's not going to work. We could do the quick selection tool, and we'll make this a little bit bigger. And the quick selection tool tries to recognize where things end and begin. And it's doing an okay job. All right, it got this little area right here. If we want to remove something, we hold the Alt or the Option key. You can just say, hey, paint over it. Don't look at that area. We don't want it. So that did a pretty good job of making that selection. Now, the Object Selection tool does not have a feather. It does not have a feather. So this is going to be a hard edge. And if it's not perfect, you're going to see it. It's not going to look good. So in this case, we're going to go up here to Select and Mask, and we'll do more into Select and Mask later. But we're going to click it. And it's showing us where the area is selected. And we're just going to add that feather manually. So I can come over here and I can add a feather of about 30. And we'll turn it into a selection. We're good. Now I'm going to make that curves adjustment. For objects that are bright and you want to darken them, it's a 3-step process. Make your highlights darker. Shift that down. Lower your contrast, because if you have high contrast, this won't work so good. And then tackle your midtones. And look at the difference between this. That's what I mean by dumbing it down. It's not important. We want this darker, and we want to lead our eye into here where things should be brighter. Okay? So if we come up here and we click on this selection tool, we'll see if it recognizes the car. Oh, it does recognize little car. So we click the little car. Looks like a Mazda maybe. I have no idea. It's going to make that selection here in a second. Once again, there's no feather on this. However, the object selection tool sometimes makes such a perfect selection that you don't need the feather. So let's check it and see. So let's make another curves adjustment. And in this case, we just want to brighten this car up. So I'm going to take my highlights up some and my midtones here in a second. Big delay. Sure why there's such a big delay. All right, that looks a lot better. So let's turn this on and off so you can see what's going on. We've got a brighter area here, right? Which is what we want. So we've brightened that car and we've done it, and the selection was pretty good. So I don't think we need to change it. We could make it brighter if we wanted. Not important in this case. What we're trying to do is just show you different ways to do stuff. So let's take our little pointer and go here and read the sand dust here. It's saying that the K value is 30%. Is that true? I know from experience that that's really dark. All right. So let's read this value here, and it's saying it's in the 40s. Let's try highlights over here. And this whole image is too dark. Let's try the sky. Sky looks good at 11%. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go select sky. It's going to select the sky. Didn't select this part of the sky. Bad. So let's hit Command D. Let's try that object selection tool. So let's select the sky. We're going to come down here, and it's not recognizing that. So once again, this is an odd situation. I'm going to hit the quick selection tool, and notice it's on plus, holding the shift key. And let's just see if I can get a better selection. All right, that's better. Is it perfect? No. I could go do a minus here and just try to get that little area back. But we'll assume it did a good job, okay? We're going to hit a key, a quick key, and the quick key is Command on a Mac, Control on a PC, Shift I, which is inverse. Select, not sure where it is, but I know it's in here. Inverse, okay? There's the quick key. So we're selecting everything but that because this is what we want to affect. So let's make a new curves adjustment, and we're going to slide this over until we get these values closer to where they should be. So I'm reading those highlights. Now, you'll notice I want you to look right over here when I go over this area. I'll put it right. It says it was at 35% and now it's at 25%. So the right is what it is now and what it was. So this gives me an idea of how much I've brightened an area. We're not quite there yet. So let's brighten this up a little bit more. So I've done this adjustment here and I've brightened it up. Now it brightened this area up a little bit too much here, which is fine. Because why? Because we can just paint that out if we want. So we can just probably take our brush how it was before and we can go in with the color black, and I'm even going to do it in the grass. Paint that out of that adjustment. So this adjustment isn't working in the sky or over here, but everywhere else it's bright. This looks a little weird to have that area so bright, so I clicked on that as well. So now we've got a much better toned image as far as we go. What's important here is notice how I broke it down into different areas that I wanted to adjust. Is this image perfect? No, but you get what I'm doing here in this photo. Don't forget about the K values. And one thing I can tell you, nobody knows what values K should be in specific areas. I do have like a little cheat sheet in form, and let me decide where I'm going to put it. And once I decide where I'm going to put it, I'll make it available for everybody. Well, that is it for today's tutorial on just how to do a basic adjustment inside Photoshop, but a little bit I showed you with Adobe Camera Raw. If you found this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you have any comments and questions, you can leave those below. And don't forget to subscribe.